You go. Okay, morning councillors and staff, and welcome to the Corporate Services meeting of July. And we'll declare the meeting open at 8:33. Move on to the number one of the agenda, application for attending meeting via video link. I'll move that those on video be accepted as a thing. You've got a seconder?
Seconded.
Seconder, Councillor Burns. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Apologies. Apologies from Councillor Campbell, I'm aware. Any more apologies? Going to move for those apologies?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Councillor Burns, seconder. Got a seconder for the apologies?
A second.
Second, Councillor Watts. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Declaration of interest. Neil?
Neil.
Public participation. Neil? Just before I move on, this meeting has been audio recorded and those in attendance should refrain from making any offensive statements. There are to be no other recordings of this meeting without the prior authorisation of council. Okay, councillors. So who have I got out there? I've got Councillor Watts, Councillor Burns, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott there somewhere?
Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Abbott.
I'm here.
And Councillor Fisher?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. We're just got a very small screen, so you might have to, if you want to speak, just raise your hand and just speak, please. Okay, business items, over to page 1, CORP 08.1, financial summary and investment report. Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll quickly go through in your agendas there. So we'll move to page 2 effectively, which provides a financial information summary. So being the very first month of the new financial year, coming into July 2021, there isn't much movement, but there is a slight positive variance to budget there of about 3.3 million, which we'll explain in a minute. The overall, it represents the first month of the new financial year, and majority of council's operating activities have been relatively consistent in that first month. And traditionally, the first month is always a very quiet month on a financial perspective. It's mainly due to everything from a timing issue with our end of month cutoffs, with invoicing coming in for July that's paid in August. But also we wrote back a lot of costs back into the end of the 2020-2021 financial year for the year-end processing that we're doing at the moment with the audit and so forth. So at the moment, there is a number of projects that have been, that will come through in votes into the next meeting in September. And a lot of those are carryover projects that we are just defining how much is going to come through in votes for those. So there's a number of projects that weren't finalised to their budget allocations. So we had some unspent budget allocations, and these projects will come through with proposed votes into the September meeting.
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Abbott here. Just want to ask Mr. Phelps a question. Just with in relation to the unspent budget allocations and the carryover projects, how does that affect the budget as council has approved it?
They come through as proposed votes into the September meeting. So what happens is that with a lot of those projects that carry over, they are either grant funded projects that flow through, or monies that we've received from grant funding that flow through RAs coming into the system. So those projects have actually had money allocated to them, be it through grant funding or through receipt of actual funds to actually do those works. So majority of those projects are capital works.
Okay, thank you.
So just moving quickly through the highlighted areas there with the main variations with the $3.3 million positive variance. The very first item there is the main item that's given us that positive variation. And effectively what has happened is that we've received some additional funding in earlier than we anticipated for our bridges, for the second lot of bridges that we're going to undertake construction works on for the 22-23 year. So effectively, once we signed an MOU with some neighbouring councils, the government gave us 30% of those bridge grant fundings so that we can progress any studies and so forth. So about $538,000 worth of additional revenue. And the other one there is also in regards to a project that is being slated for the 22-23 year for construction, and that's with the Barrington Forest Road Stage 1. Initially, we received some funding allocation documents in regards to Barrington Forest Road Stage 2, which we've been in consultation with the government agencies, and effectively we've got that switched to the Stage 1 version, which is the logical project to undertake. But with the signing of that deed, we received 70% of the funding up front. So that funding will be ultimately put back into an RA so that we can bring that into the budget for the 22-23 year. So we received a bit of extra funds in advance. The other items there are pretty well consistent to budget. The non-operating revenue and expenditure is only out by about 21,000, which is about 1.5%. Operating expenditure overall is only out 77,000, which is about 1.6%. So there's no material trends noted at the moment in regards to that expenditure. And the capital works program there is a little bit overspent at this point in time by about 150,000. And as I said earlier, in regards to a number of those projects that are flowing through from the 2021 year, we've continued to spend a bit of money on those. But when we've defined the budget allocations for those into the current year, we'll raise those as proposed votes for the September meeting. So they'll come into the budget at that point. So overall, it's a $3.3 million positive variance. The budget position is pretty well negligible. It stays at the...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I have a question, please?
Yep.
So, Wayne, that would mean that budget would be back to zero, that overspent that we've done?
Yes.
Right, thank you.
So effectively, the actual funds for the overspends of those carryover projects will be covered off by budgets in those proposed votes. Correct. So the budget position stays pretty stagnant at this point. So it's a pretty well balanced budget still. Moving on to page 4 with the bank funds and investment report. Here we've got cash held of about $35.6 million, of which 35.5 is sitting in our investments, and we have a schedule identifying those as it comes through in the report. Capital expenditure report. Here we've got effectively for the 21-22 year, we initially had in our budget $65 million, and it stayed roughly about $65 million. So it's sitting about status quo at this point. Based on the expenditure to date, we've only spent 1.6% of that budget. So we've only really just scratched the surface of our capital works program. But as I said, the timing of a lot of our invoicing for July just misses the cutoff points with suppliers supplying them after that date. Moving through your additional pages there, which is just more or less attachments to the report. Here you'll see on pages 6 through to 9 is just more or less our overall fund and function summaries. And effectively we, as you can see, we've only got very, very minor votes, and those votes are really taken up on the basis of the ones that are known at this point in time, like our additional revenue streams that have come into the system. So bottom line, the net votes come back to 0 on page 9, so there's nothing to highlight there. And then the budget variation request, which is on page 10, just highlights some of the slight movements that we've had for the month of July. And the two main ones on that are those two revenue streams that have come into the system. So overall, the net variations has come back to 0. So that leaves it as a balanced budget at this point in time. And then further on from that, on page 11 and 12, you more or less got your bank rec there and more or less your graph showing where the bank and investments are going. So we've got a bit of a shot in the arm from May coming through to July, and that's mainly due to the loan funding that we drew down for the finalisation of the Warbirds Aviation Centre in June, plus also that additional grant funding that we've received in July. So that's pushed those funds up on the little worms that come through there. Investments on page 12 more or less highlights our investments that we've got in place. As you can see, the paltry investment returns at this point in time. So everything is pretty well below 1%. So our best one there is 0.95 at this point, which is not good for an investing market. That's good for borrowings. The final couple of pages there that we have is just our summary of our capital works expenditure coming through. And as you can see on that very first page, which is the summary on page 13, our actual works completed to the revised budget at the moment is well ahead of budget, or over 100%, mainly due to those few projects that we've continued spending some money on, which will bring the votes in for next month. And the actual works that are completed to the revised full year budget, which is the 1.6% I mentioned earlier. And then we have the list of all the projects that have transpired so far, which hasn't been a lot of money being spent in regards to our projects to this date. But you'll notice a bit of a change coming through into August. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just on page, this is just for clarification, on page 13 and the environment heading, what's in that, what do we include as the environment?
In the environment, it includes your stormwater, waste management, what other ones are in there? Street cleaning, those items.
Okay, so not the environment, but okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phelps. Any further questions, councillors? No further questions. Go back to page 1. The recommendation is 5 dot points of the recommendation. Got the mover, please. No one's going to move it?
Moved.
I'll move.
Move, Councillor Watts. Second, Councillor Fisher. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Over to page 29, CORP 08.2. Just before I move on, Karen Davies, you zooming in? Just for those.
Sorry, I should have on your mute button. Yes, I am.
Karen Davies, our Infrastructure Director. Welcome, Karen. No doubt your first meeting of the Upper Shire Council. Welcome, welcome, and no doubt we'll all be seeing you a lot more in the future.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor, Scone Airport project update. We got Chris?
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if we just start off on the first page there, the table of the KPIs for the project, you'll see that the schedule/program is now red and an area of concern. The Hunter Warbirds contract that's behind scheduled progress. So there's been structural design issues that have been uncovered within the last month, that have arisen in the hangar component of the work. So the work in the hangar component has been temporarily ceased, and they're reviewing the design of the structure to determine the rectification works that are required. Once the rectification works are required, then the work will be able to restart on that hangar section. Work around the rest of the site is continuing, and work on the terminal is progressing, and work around the outside of the fire systems and the landscaping is continuing as well. So the impact of the work, the impact on the schedule of the work is yet to be determined. The building contractors are working through that now, and it really depends on the rectification work that the independent design review will agree on as to what works are required and what the impact on the schedule will be. So next month we'll have a much better idea as to what the impact will be on time, and we'll have a review of the completion dates. Moving through the budget.
Sorry, could I, Mr. Mayor, could I just ask a couple of questions, please? In relation to this, how much damage has been done, and what is the estimated time lag now for this project before it recommences? Because we've told the community that there'll be no cost to the community, but obviously any delay is a cost to the community.
Mr. Mayor, do you want me to answer some of those questions? Because I think I've got most of that in front of me. Yeah, thanks for your question, Councillor Abbott, and through you, Mr. Mayor. As Chris said, we don't know the exact time impact yet. The contractor who's looking at this is really still waiting for the engineering design to be completed. Now, having said that, they've given us some guesstimates, but it's still quite fluid. We're thinking the likely extension is now till the end of January to have this work complete, which is possibly anywhere between 6 and 8 weeks. But we've asked through the project manager, which is Public Works, to ask the contractor to look at alternative options to fast track work. So we acknowledge there's possibly going to be some delay. They're still doing some works around the project that can still be done, but this is likely to have a delay. The possibility of fast tracking is still being looked at as well. So there's a number of issues here that we don't know the answers on. I know that in the community, people are talking about timeframes. Those timeframes are not definite. All we can do is wait for the contractor to give us their schedule, which they haven't done. And the best guess is the end of January at this stage.
Thank you.
So your second question was about cost?
Yes.
Yeah.
To the community, yes, in the delay.
Yeah. So there's no cost in delay. The cost of delay by the contractor, so that any contractual costs are borne by the contractor. There's no risk to council from that aspect. Any delay costs are also borne by the contractor. The contractor has liquidated damages built into the contract. So if they miss the completion date due to errors on their side of the program, they are, I guess, required to pay liquidated damages to council to offset any cost that we might incur. Those costs are capped at about 2,300 a day, I believe.
And so if the sagging by 100 millimeters, I've been told that was a question of point loading. Is that the case, that it was all bundled up on top of the roof? I mean,
it's been explained to me that during the construction, they lift the sheet panels onto the roof in packages. So not all at once, but in large groups. So you might have 20 or so sheets in one bundle, then they lift another bundle up and they place that, you know, further down the roof. So a number of bundles would have been started to be placed on the roof at intervals along the roof span. So it wasn't a single point load, but it was apparently this mechanism that has caused the additional stresses on some of the components. That's how it's been explained to me.
and with insurance, how is council insured? Is that all through the contractors' insurance and their indemnities? And So the contract right now has accepted of fault. They have accepted fault.
Yep. So first of all, as part of the contract, we require the contractor to have both public liability insurance and also professional indemnity insurance so that they own all the risk. And they have already accepted that this is their issue to resolve. Now, whether they choose to use their insurance or what, that's up to them how they choose to fund it, but there's no cost passed on to council.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I have to say I'm finding this very concerning, and I'm getting, as you can imagine, and I'm sure you are, a lot of inquiries from the community. And I'm essentially, one of the questions is what else can go wrong? Because this is a major setback, and we've already delayed the completion of the Warbirds Museum, and now we have no idea when it's going to recommence and when it's going to be finished.
And I share your frustrations in regard to the timing. Obviously, we want this opened as soon as possible. What I can give you assurance is that there's no risk to council from a cost perspective. This is a risk that is borne by the contractor. As already indicated, the contractor owns the risk. We've also removed ourselves, I guess, from a liability by having an independent project manager. So the state government, through the Public Works Authority, are the project manager on this. So they are also managing this, and they have direct control and contractual management of the project as well. So there's a number of layers of protection in this program.
For the community. So does Public Works, are they accepting liability as well if they were overseeing this project?
Well, Public Works are only the project, Public Works are only the project manager, so there's no liability on them. But they are providing that expert contract management and project management skill that we're paying for.
And just thank you, Mr. McDonald. And also I'd like to ask, why weren't any council engineers part of this project, or were council engineers? Like, we have civil and structural engineers. So have they been having a role in overseeing what is happening too? Because we do have engineers.
We do have engineers, most of them are civil, not necessarily structural backgrounds. And I guess that's why we've gone to the point of engaging Public Works, because Public Works have that depth of skill. Again, this is really about not relying on council's own, I guess, expertise. Whilst we've identified there's an issue, this is exactly what the inspection program is designed to do: identify these issues when they first crop up. That was identified by both our own staff and the staff with Public Works working with the contractor. The works were stopped, the investigation commenced, the contractor then undertook independent engineering advice. So it's a combination of our own expertise, the expertise within Public Works Authority, the contractor's expertise, and now they've engaged an independent engineer. So I think the controls are in place have worked. They've identified the issue when it occurred. They've stopped any further work being undertaken until a solution can be determined. And it's actually it's going to give us the right result. We're not going to get a hangar that's faulty. We're going to get a facility that's fit for purpose at the end of the day.
Thank you. And also, this only came to my attention last week. How long has council known about this?
Councillor Abbott, each question, please, comes through the chair.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that reminder. So, Mr. Mayor, through you, how long has council known about this problem, this massive problem? Because it only came to my attention last week, and that was through the community, not through council.
Councillor Abbott, you asked a question at the Infrastructure Services Committee 2.5 weeks ago, I believe, and we answered it at that time, and would just sort of pretty much become aware by our own staff at about that same time. And we gave you the information that we knew at the time, that there was an impact to some structural steel that we were investigating, and we committed to providing extra information, which has been provided in today's report.
So actually, through you, Mr. Mayor, the infrastructure meeting was 1.5 weeks ago, and that's the first I had heard of it was the day before that. So I'm just wondering, is that the day that council found out about this, given that they had already said? I'm just interested as to why I heard about this through the community and not through council, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I don't know the exact date we became aware of it. As I say, issues happen on the site every day, and we don't convey that to the community or the councillors, because issues that crop up, some take a day to resolve, some take a week to resolve, some take longer. When we feel that they're actually having an impact on the program, and when we feel that there's an actual issue that needs to be notified, we do that. But at the stage when it was brought to our attention, it was, I guess, a general issue that's being dealt with. If you watch any project, there are issues that crop up all through the project that cause the project manager to question issues, ask for information, but we don't pass all that on to the public or the councillors, because most of them are resolved in a very quick time.
And thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I want to know why the whole airport matter or subject has been moved out of infrastructure into corporate services, because it seems to me that it is still an infrastructure project, and I don't understand why this has been moved.
It hasn't really been moved. The corporate services area is the sponsor, because they are the client and they will be the owner of the building. The delivery is being done by the infrastructure services unit, but the owner is the responsible person for reporting. So your reporting comes through the corporate services unit because they're the owner of the facility. But as I say, Chris's team still report up through infrastructure services.
Thank you. Actually, I just do have one more question through you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, what are the plans now? And with respect to our marketing plan, do we actually have a marketing plan? And if we do, where is that document? And can I please see it?
Yeah, maybe Christian can answer the question around marketing, or David Gatwood. I'll pass to one of those.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. General Manager. Yeah, Councillor, we do have a marketing and business plan. I'm happy to share that with councillors. Councillor Abbott, if you'd like to come and have a look, we're very happy to make that available to councillors.
Can you make that, through you, Mr. Mayor, can you please make that available on our intranet so I can look at it online without coming in, because obviously at the moment we can't come in.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, just to clarify that, well done to you. I mean, this is a project that's, you have, I believe, picked up a lot of these little issues prior to this, and I can guarantee the people of Upper, we will not be paying or signing off on this building until it is 100% correct. So well done, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just carry on then now. We're in the budget section there.
I just had a question before. Sorry, I was waiting for the clock to stop bonging in the background. Just in relation to the time frame, which I think you might have said in with the business through you, Mr. Mayor, will this impact on what we will be going out to seek for events or any way like that, with the time frame being extended?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take that question too, if you want. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Watts. The first big event was the Warbirds over Scone event. We purposely pushed that back to late March, because we knew that with every construction project, you do run into problems, whether it be weather or other issues. So we built a little bit of buffer into that. This delay, based on the current estimates of up to end of January, won't impact that Warbirds over Scone event.
Okay, Chris, back to you.
Thank you. So budget is green, where we've got a good handle on the expenditure, as was being mentioned a couple of times already. This rectification works to the design will have no cost impact to council, and we still have a fair bit of money in the contingency considering the stage of the project. Moving down to variations, it's green. All the variations that have been raised have been approved and resolved. We're awaiting submissions from the contractor for the completion of the additional works for the security system and the electrical fit out. And that was always going to be priced up once the final detail has been delivered in the design. The deliverables design, it's red, and that's, as we've been talking about, they've gone back to review the design of the hangar building. As been mentioned, they've got independent designs from Northrop in, which is a big engineering house in Newcastle. So independent design review being undertaken there. And because of this, the risks and issues is red, which is about the impact of the structural design issues likely to cause a delay in completion. Contractors is green, that they're all in place and operating quite well, apart from this, the problem we've had with the steelwork. And work health and safety, we'll put it as amber because it was this was treated as initially as a safety, I guess, as a safety issue as well. Works were immediately stopped once there was an issue. This issue was raised its head. The works were immediately stopped and the workers were withdrawn from the site until inspections were maintained or undertaken to determine what happened. So that's why that's amber.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So just explanation. So a near miss, is that a work health safety term? And what does a near miss mean?
A near miss, through you, Mr. Chair. The principal contractor has we're operating under the principal contractor's work health and safety management system. And under that management system, they have something that they call a near miss, which is something that, as you can understand, that didn't happen, like no one was injured at all. But they've treated it as a near miss to give it the gravity of the investigation, so that it draws the attention of their safety management team, rather than just discounting it as, oh, nothing really happened, no one was injured. So this is a good thing, the fact that it's been treated as a near miss and been taken seriously, and it will be investigated fully. So their response was very good.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, what was the date of this near miss happening and stopping of work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd have to get back to you on that. I can't recall the date.
Chris, we'll take that on notice. I don't think you expected to know that here at this meeting. We'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Okay, moving on through the report. This period's progress summary, just a little bit further down the page, please. Thank you. So since our last meeting, there's been electrical, landscaping and fire suppression designs have been finalised. The concrete slab works for the hangar and the terminal have been completed. And of course it wasn't one great big slab, it was poured in different sections according to the design of that the concrete slab. The erection of the structural steelwork was completed, and the civil works for the fire suppression tanks was commenced. So there was some concrete slabs at the eastern end of the building for the fire building and the fire tanks that commenced. The precast lift shaft for the terminal was completed, and the steel was delivered for the terminal. So that's the steel structure for the terminal building, which is, if you can imagine, it's the same material that you would get for a steel structure if you were building a house. And there were some resolutions during the month of the defects in welding that were picked up in our surveillance reports. So there was a boilermaker repairing defects in the welding. The next period, activities that are happening in the next period, if you just scroll down, back up a little bit, please. Thank you. Resolution of the structural design issues and the remedial works that will take place according to the design review. Finalisation of concrete works for the pump room and the slab, and that's been actually completed this week. The cladding to the hangar will occur, and the installation of the fire services pipe. Airside civil works, there is some post-completion works happening on the drainage works downstream on the eastern end of the runway. We've got prices in on those just recently, so we're going through the approvals process to get that to happen, internal approvals that is. And the engine rev up pad on the helipad, that's part of those works. So critical issues for attention, finalising of the designs for all of those items, which has been completed now, close monitoring of progress to see, as Greg referred to earlier, if we can recover some time on the construction program, and the defects identified in the welding, the painting of the steelwork, which are being rectified in situ. And the major risk is the impacts of the structural steel redesign and the remedial works that we talked about, the coordination of the building design with the main contractors for the works that council is managing, and we've had a lot of meetings between council, Kingston and Freeman Ryan Design to make sure that everyone understands what's happening there and that nothing slips between the cracks. There's major risk of inclement weather still, I guess, until we get the roof, until we get the hangar building and the terminal building clad. It's still open to weather delays. And the last one there is obtaining staff for the centre, including the gift shop, the cafe and the kitchen. So they've been identified as the major risks. We scroll down now to completion dates. The air side was complete. Just scroll back up a little bit, please. Thank you. The first table is the air side. It was complete on the 28th of April. The second table is the Warbirds Centre. So prior to the effective steelworks being uncovered, the current approved completion date was 21st of November. And they were mostly the delays from the caused by the allocated to the contractor works was due to wet weather. So the effect of the time of the hangar redesign and rectification works is unknown at this stage, although it does seem like it will be in January sometime. And as Greg stated before, but we'll have a much clearer understanding of this when we report next month.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, how will this delay affect our loan schedule and repayments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Phelps to answer that. I don't think it's going to have any impact, but Wayne, you can address that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Won't have any effect at all, Councillor Abbott, in regards to the loan scheduling and repayments.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, are we still renting the Aero Club at $1,000 a week?
Mr. Mayor, I can answer that question. We are still renting the Aero Club. I couldn't give a figure on how much per week, but that.
Yes, I believe that is the case, Councillor Abbott. I can give you a more definitive figure at a later date if you like.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, could I actually have a figure of to date what we've spent on renting the Aero Club?
Sounds in the right order.
Pardon? Sorry? I'm sorry, I had a glitch there with my connection, or maybe council had a glitch with their connection. So just to repeat my question, could I have a figure of what we've spent to date on renting the Aero Club?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can obtain that information for you, Councillor Abbott, and provide it at a later date.
Thank you. And the defects through you, Mr. Mayor, that we've identified in welding and painting to steelwork, are they council costs?
No, Councillor, as I said before, any defects on the work are at the risk of the contractor. They have to make good any repairs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we scroll down through the report, that's the table of the detail of the completion dates. So as I said, that will be updated next month when we get a better understanding of the effect of the delay. The paragraph underneath the table there refers to another project control group, which has recently been formed to handle the operation side of the Hunter Warbirds, so including business planning, commercial arrangements, marketing and promotions, centre resourcing, and some finalisation of the final design elements, for example, approval of tile selection and carpet selection and wall colour paint, wall paint colours. So all that is bundled together into the separate project control group. So as we scroll down, just keep going through the links. Keep going down. That's the breakdown of the budget, which has changed. Just stop there, please. Top of that page. Thank you. Actual expenditure. If we look at the top table on that page there, the actual spend for financial year 21 was just over $14.5 million, which is just a little bit over the revised budget of 14.4 and higher than the original budget of 13.2. And if you look at the financial year this year to date, the year-to-date expend when this report was written was only 690,000. The July invoices haven't even come in at that stage for the major construction. So it's only partially for the month of June. Scrolling down, please. So we get to the risks, which I believe I've touched on already up the top of the table of risks. These were the top 4 risks that are listed. And at that point, we get to the end of the report.
Thanks through you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to ask, because I was looking through the project expenditure about the cameras again, and I did ask about them at infrastructure. So we obviously spent a lot of money on the cameras, but we're not using them at the moment, or are we? Are they in use at the moment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, which cameras?
Are they the cameras that I'm not completely clear, but this has been something I've been asked about, is that we spent money on cameras, and that previously when aircraft came in to land at Scone, council would listen in to them coming in, and they would have ID numbers, so we'd know who were coming in and out. So how are we monitoring who's coming in and out at the moment? Without where the cameras, I believe, have been moved, and just while all this building is happening.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Rabbit, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I know that there were some cameras moved onto the Aero Club building so that they could see the airport runway. I'm not 100% sure if they're the ones you're asking.
Oh, okay. Well, I will find out further what I just want to know about them, because I know that we spent a lot of money on cameras, and I'm guessing they were for security, and that it was to be an updated version of knowing who were coming in and out. And I've heard that they have been moved. So I'd like further information on that, given that this is community.
Bill, got an answer?
Through the chair. I believe that those cameras may be relating to actually looking at aircraft.
Yes.
Actual aircraft identifications for invoicing purposes only.
Yes, that's right.
An operational issue. That's more or less so that we can invoice our customers that come and land at the airport.
Yes, so are we doing that? Because they've been moved. So wherever they've been moved to, are they still functional for the purpose that we bought them for?
Yes, I'll take that on notice, Councillor Abbott, and come back to you in regards to it, because that's what I believe that the cameras were for.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry, can I interject through the chair, Mr. Mayor? So I can confirm that those cameras are operational. There are a number of occasions when airport users are invoiced and they query the charges, and the cameras are the medium that we use to either confirm or deny the fact that a particular aircraft has landed. So certainly the invoicing of all of the airport users happens on a monthly basis based on the data that we receive from a third party, and the cameras are then utilised if there is a dispute.
So they are, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, so they are functioning as cameras for the purpose that we bought them for.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Gatwood. That's what I was about to say, and that's most likely why our landings per month have gone from approximately 400 to 800. Is probably getting the truth out there. Chris, have you finished your report?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, councillors, back to page 29. The recommendation that the council receive the report and note the information. Got a mover?
Yeah, I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Move Councillor Burns. Seconder? I'll move it myself. All in favour?
All right. Can I just make a comment on it, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Mr. Councillor Burns?
This project is a large one. It's one of the larger ones that we have done. The hangar aside, it's not the hangar in itself is not one of the bigger ones that we've done, but it is still a large project. I'm really heartened by the fact that staff have picked this up, that they have got on the front foot and getting out in front of this problem. Communication was a bit of a iffy thing at some point, but we got there in the end. It's on a curve. The trajectory of our project management is actually going really well. So well done, staff. You know, get it built. As Warren Buffett says, if the faint-hearted never held the fair lady's hand, these projects are going to have little issues with them. We need to minimise them and fix them and move on. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. So that was moved by Councillor Burns, second by myself. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Over to page 37, response to previous questions. It was only Councillor Campbell, which is an apologies. So that's only for notation only. Okay, councillors, any other questions?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a question. I have had many, which have been put already, but I'd like to ask or request that we have a legal briefing on the Warbird Museum and the position that council finds itself in right now. I'd like to be briefed in a legal capacity. Thank you. And then my other question is, why can I not be on this committee? And given that we've pushed out, well, we haven't, but elections have been pushed out to December, I would like to put the case again that I am a committee member on this committee, and that if essentially I believe, in my opinion, councillors should be able to be committee members for all three of the standing committees. Thank you.
Mr. Jam, you might be able to hear that. The charter's got to be changed. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 councillors on this committee. And for you, Councillor Abbott, that is not on the committee, you've certainly had your debate, and we certainly will give you your debate. So being on the committee, I'm not sure what additional you can do. But Councillor, Mr. GM.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess there's 2 mechanisms. One would be the charter could be changed to include additional councillors, and Councillor Abbott could fill one of those. Or alternatively, council could determine that the existing representation on the committee be changed and remove one of the sitting councillors and replace it with Councillor Abbott. As Councillor Abbott points out, though, it doesn't stop her attending the committee meetings and viewing them. And certainly the questions are being asked in this forum. So she does have a voice in that respect if she wasn't able to sit on the committee itself.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a vote then. and the standing committees are important committees. And I really do believe that councillors should, all of the councillors, all 7 of us, those of us left, should be able to be committee members, given that these are important committees.
Taking on notice, that's your opinion, and it'll be up to the whole of council. Remembering this, any decision made here today or any committee must go back to council. So I don't believe it's a good idea to have all councillors on a standing committee, then go back to council. Anyway, that's only my opinion. Okay, move on. Any questions from any other councillors?
Can I just say something around that? I understand, through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand where Councillor Abbott's coming from, but the purpose of the committees, and there's many of them, is the fact that we put our trust in the people that are on the committees. They make a recommendation to council. If we're all going to be on every committee, what is the point of meeting at a meeting at the end of the month? That is when we get together and look at those recommendations of your fellow councillors.
Certainly agree with you, Councillor Watts.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, just for further clarification, it's only these 3 standing committees that my opinion is that councillors should be able to be on all 3. Not for the others, I totally get that. And especially the community committees, you don't want them councillor heavy, that's for sure. But this is a standing committee, which is different. And just back to my question about the legal briefing, is that going to be taken on notice?
Taken on notice.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions? I have one many months ago. It was the DA's buildings within the boundaries of the air site. I'd still like that followed through before this aviation traction centre is opened, to make sure all buildings inside that air site have DA approval. Thank you. No further questions? Thank you all for your attendance. Declare the meeting closed at 9:25.